Welcome back to VFR, everybody, and today we are taking another flight. I'm going to call this part 2.5 of our Learning to Fly the DC-6 series. So this episode is going to be a little bit different than the others. Instead of doing a full flight, what we're going to do is wrap up last night's flight, which was into Egilsstaðir on the other side of Iceland. We're going to go through the descent and landings there. Spoiler alert, it's not going to go that well. So, because I'm still not feeling real comfortable with landing and getting the airplane down in a kind of controlled manner, we're going to be, after that, talk about what went wrong in those landings, and then we're going to shoot a couple of approaches into Keflavik to practice where we need to be when we need to be with this airplane. So we're going to jump right into the back into the cruise, and I will catch up with you guys once we are kind of safely on the ground. Alright, so we are now coming around the north. Well, I guess it isn't the north. We're coming around the easternmost coast of Iceland here. So we're going to begin thinking about looping around. You can see the valley off to our left. That's kind of our target. And we've picked up, I couldn't get the first NDB to tune in, but I did get the second one. So there's two right around the airport. This one's the southerly one, so it's off to the south of the airport. Not really the one we're aiming for, but it is showing us where the airport is roughly. And it is back behind us a little bit, which makes sense. The track's where it is. So this ridge is kind of our last issue, and we can probably pretty safely clear it if we start turning in now. But again, I'm just trying to give myself space and time to do, a proper descent. To the right just a little bit. We're getting pretty close. If it weren't for the sun, I'd be visual to it. Hopefully at this point. And there's the runway. See it? So we're going to level off. We're a little bit too far to the left. But this is not bad, and we can do that visually. Can we see it in the cockpit? Not really. There it is. So it's coming up. We are now bleeding speed. And I gotta give it some throttle. We should be at flaps 20. I'm gonna knock it down to flaps 30. Oh, this glare is pretty brutal. And I did not ask the autopilot to turn off, so that's what it's going to do. Now right now we're pretty bang on altitude actually, which is rare for me. So let's try and keep it that way. I'm going to go down just a little bit on flaps. So we should be flaps 40 now. And I'm forcing the, so I'm forcing the nose down and we are too fast. The ILS is saying we're good, but I've got 4 whites. So this may not have the glide slope configured. Yeah, this isn't happening. We're going around. Flaps up, gear up, and power. Which way should we go? We're going to bank off to the right. Another knock of flaps. So we're still high. We nose is too far down. We want to keep speed off. Yeah, no, yeah. So we're too high. A bit too fast. Oh, man. Woo! What is it? Do as I say, not as I do? Yeah, the Air Force. And so what happened last time was we were too high and too fast, and I made the no-no, put my nose down, and you know what that did? That only gave me more speed going into the runway. That's not going to help you if you get in that situation. You know, it will help you going around, but I was not in the mood to go around, so I didn't. And that's not very good aviating. So let's try it again. I did take away some of the glare so I can actually see what I'm doing. I was not planning on an IFR approach into it, but hey. If that's what happens, that's what happens. So yeah, those short finals are definitely going to take some practice for me. And this airplane, it's not going to respond quickly if you're all out of place in a bad spot. Well, it looks like 3 white, 1 red. We might be a little high, so I'm going to go ahead and go down to flaps 40. And our speed's looking pretty good, 110. Again, I don't have any glide slope, which is indicated by the red and white showing on the indicator right now. We're at 4 white, so I'm going to go down to flaps 5. Or flaps 50, I should say. Just make sure we're in flaps 50. And just start descending a little bit more. And we can keep a speed of about 105 knots. So we're still high, but it's already looking and feeling a lot better. There's that 1 red. So now I'm going to start thinking about coming back to flaps 30. Or thinking about coming back to flaps 40. And here we come. Again, we're good on speed. We're still a touch high. We're still at 3 white, 1 red. And there's the second red. So we can go flaps 50 now. And now we're just going to kind of come down. And just let it settle. So that was a lot better until the end when we forgot the reversers. And in an airfield like this, the reversers are going to really help. So, yeah. Thanks for watching this anyway. We ended up with a nice lake view. Yeah, the tip from that one, make sure your reversers are, or make sure your throttles are in neutral before trying to hit the reversers. Okay, so after that misadventure, we're going to rejoin up here in the air about 5,000 feet. In altitude, and about 60 miles from Keflavik. I've basically made this a save point. I saved it as a flight file so we can rejoin here when we have to reshoot the approach. Again, it's just kind of good for me to go through this and not have to go through necessarily all the setup in another whole flight. I'm going to do a little bit of setup here while we're on active pause. I am going to tune in the Keflavik VOR so we know how far away we are. 112.8. And then we're going to tune in the ILS on the other one too. That's 109. And it should be 109.5. And basically we're going to be heading out to the ocean, or to the North Sea side, and kind of loop back around for what is going to be runway 10 it should be. So that's going to be the plan. We will kind of cruise for a little while. We've had the guys run the cruise checklist right now, so that's kind of what state we're in. And then we will, as we get closer, descend into that approach and just kind of practice. The big things that I'm looking to practice is maintaining an appropriate power. We're going to be shooting for about 70 BMEP on this. I went back and rewatched the videos. If we can hold 70 BMEP fully configured, that should keep us descending at about 3 degrees glide slope. The other thing that we're going to be making sure we're doing is just getting down into the flow of using the reversers. This is also going to help. I'm going to unpause and let us get started on our way. But this is also going to help because we're going into an airport which is probably more appropriate for this airplane. Not that these, not that DC-6s can't land on smaller runways, but that was probably, Egilsstaðir was probably a smaller runway than I gave it credit for. Keflavik has nice big ones. This was an old Navy station. They had bigger planes than this landing there, so they're set up for us. I mean, we'd want to work up to landing on those short fields and in tougher spots, but you don't have to start there, and it's really not a good idea because you're going to put yourself under more pressure, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to look foolish on YouTube. So Keflavik has nice long runways. Even if we don't get it just right, there should be plenty of stopping room, and we can kind of, we can take it a little bit easier. I'm going to go ahead and throw the gyro pilot on. We're going to cruise towards Keflavik a little bit. You can see we're 62 nautical miles away. And I will catch up with y'all once we start descending in, and then we'll just kind of walk through the approach. All right, so we're now beginning our descent into Keflavik. We're passing 3,600. I'm going to level off at 3,000 feet. Just ocean out here, so no terrain to worry about, nothing else. The airport is going to be off to our right, and you can see we've got the ILS tuned in. It's going to be off our nose to our right, and the ILS for this runway 10 is going to be 109.5. And you can see it's 23 miles, so we're pretty far out there. But I'm basically just going to level off at 3,000 and try to get configured to get all set up and configured to land. And we're really waiting for this to kind of almost go perpendicular before I turn in. We'll turn in before that, of course, but that's giving us a good idea where the actual airport is. And keep an eye on our altitude. We are passing 3,100, so let's bring the nose back up. And get ready to put it into maybe a little too much. And get ready to put it into altitude hold mode now that we're here at 3,000 feet. And there we are, 3,000 feet. Okay, so I do have the charts for Keflavik up. I'm going to try and put that on the screen here. So basically, this is going to be the ILS we're following. Now, we don't actually have RNF, so we can't actually follow any of these waypoints, but this is just helping me visualize what we're looking at. And as I was setting this up, I did accidentally turn on ATC. And I didn't mean to, so he's going to be talking to us. Yeah, we're not going to do that. But so this is just helping me visualize where we need to be. Basically, we're probably out past the end of the chart, but we're going to turn in right, and it's just going to be a straight shot in. And there's a bit of land in front of the airport. You can kind of see it there, and you can see the runway, actually. So that just helps me visualize that. My Achilles heel in Europe is I just don't have a good, reliable source for European charts. Not reliable, but I don't know where to find them all. So if anyone has any kind of free or free-ish European chart sources, that would be cool, because I normally use ChartFox, and that has a really good American airport coverage, but not a lot in Europe. So we're going to come right a little bit, because we're coming up on the airfield. Now you can see the airport out there, and we're just going to try, and we're oscillating a little bit, and we're just going to try and get those needles to start coming in. So we're going to establish ourselves laterally and then establish ourselves vertically. The nice thing about this approach is we have plenty of space and plenty of time, like I was talking about, so that's going to help quite a bit too. Now, we're talking through the procedure that we're going to follow. Once the needles start to come in, we're going to turn in and try to establish, we'll establish ourselves horizontally on the localizer, and then we'll look for the glide slope to come in. Now, we are then going to configure for the in-range checks. We could probably do the in-range checks now, actually, but once we get a little bit closer, I'll run the in-range checks. And then once we're kind of turning on and we're getting towards 10 miles or so, that's when I'm going to start thinking about running the before landing checklist. Once we've run before landing checklist, we're going to get fully configured for landing. So we're going to go flaps 30 and 70B MEP. And then we'll just be trying to catch up and, manipulate those settings to stay on the glide slope, essentially. So we may be high. If we're high, we're going to go flaps 50. If we're low, we're going to go flaps 30. And if we're bang on, we're going to go flaps 40. And then hopefully we shouldn't have to go to flaps 20. That wouldn't be very good. So I'm going to go ahead and let them run the in-range checklist.
Smoking signs. On. In-range checks complete.
Alright, and just double checking, I do have the Keflavik VOR tuned in on nav 2, so both these arrows should be pointing in the same direction. But the skinny white one is the one we're really following. That's going to take us to runway 10. And we're holding 3,000 feet. Everything's looking good. We're just trying to get some situational awareness. The runway's over there. And we can start to anticipate picking up the localizer here shortly. And again, going back to the chart, we're just trying to basically pick up this line here. This line that's kind of going off to the slightly, mostly to the west. And I guess I shouldn't say that light is the runway, it's a runway. It may not be ours. Alright, so the glide slope is starting to come in. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the before landing checklist.
Setting flaps 20.
And I'm going to give us a little bit of right turn, just because the more perpendicular we are going to this arrow, the faster that that needle is going to come in. See, the glide slope's coming down. But we're still bleeding off speed here. That's one thing that is...
20 flaps set. Mistress ridge, please. Auto ridge.
look at. They may have to wait a little bit to bleed off all that speed, and they can go to the appropriate flap setting. We're in flap 20 now.
Gear up and down, please. Gear up and down.
So you're coming down, and you see we're getting a little bit high on the glide slope. So honestly, I probably should have run the before landing a little bit earlier. So we're back into the white arc. I'm going to go ahead and give us as much flaps as we can get right now.
Rumps. 2400 RPM. 2400 RPM set. Cow flaps. +3 degrees.
And we can see the runway right there.
ADI. ADI off. ADI is off. Landing lights. Speed good. Extending lights. Lights extended and on. Carbine. Calming cold. Set cold. Before landing checks complete.
So we'll see if we get the glide slope to respond a little bit. If we start to catch up with the glide slope here, I'll turn in and go for the runway. If we don't get it to come in, and we're not going to get it to come in because, you know what? You're going to have to take it off altitude control. So that's okay, though. We're just going to go around then. I'm not going to go around, but we're going to pull up the flaps, and basically we're going to pass the runway, and I'm just going to loop back around, out to sea, and then come in. So that's an important final check. That'll belong on the before landing checklist. Make sure or before that final descent checklist, make sure your altitude control is off. See, we're going to pass the runway on our left here. There they are, a nice long runway. Ooh, and then that happens. I don't like it when that happens. So we're going to give it a little bit more power too, just because I don't want to bring... See, and here's the needles are coming in, and it's coming in real fast. Because we're basically perpendicular to it. And now we're just going to start kind of a gentle turn around. And again, I'm not in any real hurry to do the 360, just because if we take this turn nice and slow and in a wide arc, we'll have a little bit more time to configure and get down. But we are at 3,000 feet, so I'm going to go ahead and take the altitude control off, so we can just at least start chipping away at the altitude. And it's not coming back, so we're going to bring it back on the power. 26 probably. And maybe go flaps 30. Just start to make a dent. So control is off, and it is still holding altitude, so I'm going to come back on the power a little bit even more. And I am going to actually take the con. And we want to maintain a bit more speed and let the altitude start to come down. So we don't need to get this slow just yet. And keeping an eye on the distance. 8 nautical miles is okay. We're at 3,000 feet, so that's okay. You can see we're now actually a little bit below the glide slope. So I may come up to flaps 20 just because, again, now we're a little below. And this time I'm just being a lot more intentional about my BMEP setting. We're going to aim for about 70. But right now, we're still low, so the power isn't really our problem. And we see the runway off to our nose. And so you can visualize a lot easier what we actually need to do to make it come in. And there is the glide slope coming in. I'm going to go back to flaps 30. And once it's kind of bang on, I'm going to try and go flaps 40 and bring the power back. Now we want to maintain positive torque. You don't want to come all the way off the power. We don't want to idle it. But we want to set it about 70. And that should set us up for a 3-degree descent, more or less. Now we're still a little bit above the glide slope, so we may have to go down to flaps 50 for a second. And I'm actually going to do that. But once we start to see that improve, we're really just going to go right back to flaps 40 because we don't need to overshoot that. Just an altitude check. We're at 2,000 feet at about 6 nautical miles, which is about what we'd expect. If you calculate it out for a 3-degree descent, you'd want to be at about, if you start at 3,000 feet at 10 miles, you'd want to be at around 2 nautical miles, or 2,000 feet at about 6 nautical miles. So that's tracking. We're still a little high, but the our lateral position is looking good. And again, we're not trying to let the nose come down on the aircraft. And we're still behind the glide slope. Let's make sure we go down to flaps 50. And then once we get down, so we're going to basically bring the nose up ever so slightly. And then once we're down, we're going to go to and once we're right about to touch down, we're going to go to idle power. And then we're going to smack the reversers on. So it's showing we're way high now. So I'm actually going to bring the power out just a touch. I don't want to do that, but Hopefully that brings the glide slope back in. We're just trying to resist the temptation to let that nose come down. We are high. Ooh, did I bring the flaps all the way up? Nope, we're good. We'll keep it in flaps 50 as we make our approach. I'm just taking a little more power out. Again, I'm still kind of forcing it onto the ground here, which isn't ideal. See, we are high. And a little bit fast. But we're going to go now idle. Bring the nose up a bit. Get ready on the reversers. Reversers. On. And we made it. See? Not the prettiest. But we had more space than we did at Egilsstaðir. Still lots of runway left. That might be a good... I might have to try and get that on a custom view. Because that's not great for that. That might work. So when you're coming in, dup, dup, you might be able to do that. So welcome back to Keflavik. We're going to shoot that again. And it's really just going to be repetition. So I might record that and see how it goes. But I probably won't talk over it. But the moral of the story is, even if you don't get it perfect... keep trying, keep at it. That's what's really interesting to me about all this, is not so much the procedures of piloting at all, but how the airplane's going to respond and how we get it to do what we want. So if you're not making perfect landings, don't kick yourself too bad. It is a tricky airplane. It's not very terribly forgiving, especially if you're out of where it wants to be at a certain phase of flight. So we're getting down to 100 nautical, or we're getting down to 100 knots. It's a bit, it's okay. And we are at full flaps 5, so I'm actually going to bring it back up to flaps 4, or flaps 40. I don't know why I call it flaps 5 and flaps 4 and 3. And there's the runway. We're going to begin pitching we're going to begin turning to pick that up. And we're still below the glide slope, but it's not terrible. And it looks like it's trending in the right direction. And the needles should come in, and they are. And so we're just going to nicely bank over. You know, I can fix the lateral alignment a lot easier than I can fix the horizontal alignment. So that's something I'm focusing on, but I do have 2 white, 2 red right now, so that's good. And we're a little high now, so I'm going to go back to flaps 50. And we don't want to re-overshoot, so just gently bringing it in. See, now the glide slope is getting a little below us, but we're okay. We're looking much better than last time. So just keep that speed under control now. I'm just trying to really keep that speed down. Give us a nice, gentle descent. And see, we're actually getting over the glide slope. I'm going to make sure I'm in flaps 50. but not too bad. We've got 2 white, 2 red, so we're a little out of the glide slope, but we really don't want to overcompensate at this point because this is definitely manageable. And now we're not going to severely flare, but we are just going to bring the nose up slightly as we cut the power. And I'm just kind of... I'm really not even using a lot of stick. I'm just trimming. To keep the speed, we're up to 120. We're at 110 right now. A little high. But this is looking pretty good. Up and let it settle. And that was a bounce. This doesn't work as well as I would like. Yes, it's a really tough time to look down. I don't know. I don't know what to do about that. I guess you kind of have to almost fly it like this. Because going custom view is not really going to work there. But that felt much better. Still a little rough on the at the very tail end. But overall, that felt much, much better. Alright, so we're going to do one more approach here. Into runway 10. Alright, so now the glide slope's starting to come in. We just want to be thinking a little bit ahead of it. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to flaps 40 right now. We're 7 miles from the localizer. We can see the runway in sight. So right now it's showing our bang on the glide slope. But it looks like it's trending, if anything, slightly below us. But our goal is just to hold this, basically. I'm just gently turning, ever so slightly. It's not a very maneuverable plane, but it is fun to fly by hand. I'm not quite sure why. It has a lot of inertia, but it's stable. It responds to your inputs. I don't know, in a pleasing way. That might just be me, though. I'm sure the DCS folks would go nuts. Maybe stately is a good word for how it handles with the stick. The glide slope's still looking good. We're at 70 BMEP. Now we're getting a little high. So I'm just going to keep pitch in, and if we got to go to flaps 50, we go to flaps 50. So going now to flaps 50. And you can see the runway there. And we're gonna want to start catching up to the glide slope here. It's getting further below us, which isn't great. And I'm just going to prep my view, too, just a little bit. I'm going to zoom out so we can see my instruments. Also see the reverser. So we might need it on this one. We're still high, but we're trending in the right direction. We were trending in the right direction. I see 3 white, 1 red. We're still trending in the right direction, so that's good. We just want to keep that trending in the right direction. And drive it down. Speed's 110. That's 2 white, 2 red. I'm a little bit off laterally. Again, that's easier to fix. And here I'm just really trying to judge my height so I can bring the nose up at a good time. Two white, 2 red. Getting a reassuring beeping. There's the threshold. Right, we're just going to gently bring the nose up, cut the power. And we're on the ground. I'm going to put the nose down. And reversers. Not that we needed them on that one. So that one felt pretty good. That one we were able to stay nicely, nicely on the glide slope until we could pick it up visually, and then, yeah, from there that one felt a lot better. So we're gonna keep practicing this. I mean, that's if you're struggling with it, that's all the best I can say is, hey, do it a bunch of times. This is a flight sim. We're not paying by the hour to run these things. We don't have to pay for fuel or gas, and there's, you know, if you crash it, we can get you a new plane. So repetition is good. Just make sure, yeah, you're thinking about what you're doing as you're repeating it. Like, try to think what was good about that one, what wasn't good. I think we were the best established out there. I was most comfortable with where the runway was, certainly. Initially I was thrown off because we're actually coming at it from a little bit behind it, and so that's why we saw this crossing runway first. But yeah, that's pretty much it for our landing practice. Thanks for watching another episode 2.5 of learning the DC-6. As always, like, comment, subscribe if you're interested in seeing more of this stuff. Or if you have any suggestions, leave a comment below. That's it for VFR. Take it easy, everybody.